Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Animation. I'm Merve and this is my buddy Blake.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about the first and only season of Cowboy Bebop.
This is Animation. Are you ready?
We've got Netflix coming out with the live action Cowboy Bebop, so we thought it would be smart to cover the original anime Cowboy Bebop and see what we thought about that. So before we get into what it's about, we are going to go through our rating.
Oh, do we do rating
ready
first?
For some rating action. Yes, we do.
Whoops. I mean, it's only episode 20 or whatever, so how should I know?
Yeah, that's all right.
The order of things. All right.
Will you recommend this to us? First comes Rock, John Ken Pon.
Are you ready?
Yep.
First comes Rock, John Ken Pon. Yeah,
I give this a 5. Yeah, a little bit of agreement
you love
here.
This one.
I really like this. Yeah. I can understand why Netflix wants to ruin it or reboot it.
Right. Ruin it, exactly. We will have a little bit of, so for me, it's opposite day a little bit. I do give it a 4 as far as our scale, the Likert scale. This is something I would recommend to others. But for me, based on how we typically do it, it'll be a little bit of an opposite day. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Okay.
I could talk about what Cowboy Bebop is about in one of two ways. Either I could say, we could sit here for 2 hours and I could go through everything that happens in every episode, or I could just give everyone an idea of what it's about at a high level. And I think for everyone's sanity, that's probably the way to go.
It is necessary to set the record straight regarding our tale. You must study this series of events. You may find more. You may not.
So first, the Bebop crew is just trying to make a buck, and they're the most entertaining gang of bounty hunters in the year 2071. Spike and Jet are space cowboy bounty hunters who never end up getting paid. Actually, they do rarely get paid, so that's not 100% true. I actually looked out for this. It took until episode 8 before they got any money from any of the bounties, which I thought was pretty funny. But that's the first time they get paid. Then they come across Faye Valentine, a con woman with a lot of debt, and she joins the Bebop crew. And then we've got a corgi, an experimental corgi, Ein, who joins the crew. And then eventually there's a hacker girl named Edward that joins the crew. So we've got those characters, Spike, Jet, Faye, Ein, and Edward. Yep, those 5 who join the crew.
Speaking of Ein, experimental corgi because it's a data dog. However, as a corgi owner myself, all Ein does is bark at things and want food. And that's not experimental. That's just having a corgi.
I wanted to ask you about that. I'm glad you brought that up, because how many corgis have you had at this point in your life?
Just one.
Oh, okay. I thought you had a corgi when we were in college.
I had a puggle. That was Chewy.
Yeah, what was the other dog you had?
Aristotle.
Yeah, what kind of dog was that?
He was a German Shepherd Beagle mix.
Oh, okay.
They were both rescue dogs. Lily over here, I paid for.
Gotcha. Well, I wanted to ask you because they got the experimental science dog or whatever, and it didn't do anything. I kept waiting for its jaws to open up in like 4 different directions with fangs and stuff.
Or for it to type on a computer or do something.
It wears dog costumes real well, though.
That's a specialty of corgis, I feel like. Their body shape is just perfect for costuming.
Perfect for it. They go on a ton of different adventures, chasing bounties all over the solar system. I think most of where they go is in our solar system.
It's just one solar system. Yeah. I don't think it's intergalactic.
Yeah, but every genre is covered. So I made a list of the genres that the different episodes covered as I was watching it.
That is good foreshadowing because I'm going to be talking about genre later in this episode.
All right, very good. So there's ones that include horror elements, mystery, action, fantasy, romance, heist plots, revenge, comedy, and of course a bunch of sci-fi in a gritty sci-fi world. I think I caught all of them. Maybe you'll remember some I didn't, but so really that's what it's about in a nutshell. It's bounty hunters going on adventures, and it's different stories every episode. So Merv, from a writer's perspective, might as well get into this now. How did they do with Cowboy Bebop?
Regale us with your wit, storyteller.
All right, so you segued into this perfectly. We didn't even talk about this beforehand, which is cool. So I'm going to talk about blending genre and how Cowboy Bebop does it nearly perfectly. But the main genre of Cowboy Bebop, I would argue, is cowboy. It's the Western. Nice. Almost every story in this is a Western style story. The cowboy in Cowboy Bebop. When you create a piece of blended genre, you generally speaking have one main genre and then a secondary genre. In this case, the main genre is Western. The secondary genre is sci-fi, science fiction. What genre does for a story, and I've talked about this quite a bit, is allows the reader or viewer to do less work. So when I see Cowboy Bebop, and it starts off and it has twangy acoustic guitar style music, and they walk into an old dusty town, there are certain things that I expect, that we expect as viewers, and we don't have to think about it. We don't have to hold it in our heads or go, well, what's going to happen here in this old dusty town? We know there's probably going to be a shootout. We know there's likely going to be maybe a bar fight. There's going to be bounty hunting. There's going to be kidnapping and rescuing, and the tropes of a Western, which this does all the way through. There's other genres that it handles pretty well. Like you mentioned, lots of action, a lot of science fiction.
I like the horror one with the alien. That alien bacteria that was going. I mean, that one stood out a ton to me because, it had a lot of alien-esque horror themes.
Yeah.
That's something else that Cowboy Bebop does real well, and I've got a little bit on later, is they take a lot of inspiration from a lot of other things that people can watch and be like, oh yeah, they took inspiration from whatever, right?
Right. And that's what genre is, and that's generally how it's used. You can have interesting, complex characters, though I would say almost all of these characters fit into the Western genre. Faye Valentine is a femme fatale. Spike is the quiet cowboy. I mean, every episode except for the last few end with "See you later, space cowboy," right? Mm-hmm. So again, genre is something, and there's a lot of arguments. We could argue about Star Wars and what genre Star Wars is. I argue it's fantasy. It's not science fiction, but it obviously has science fiction elements in it. Cowboy Bebop has some science fiction elements in terms of your protagonists are often morally questionable, and sometimes your bad guys are morally questionable, except the main storyline, which is pure Western, which has your heroic cowboy and you're just pure villain. His name's even Vicious. Mm-hmm. So there's no question, is this the bad guy or is he not? Westerns also, you can almost always substitute the Western genre for the samurai genre. They're very similar. And even Cowboy Bebop plays with that in the one episode with Andy, where he's a cowboy bounty hunter. And then at the end, he becomes a samurai bounty hunter. So they're playing with that. They know that. They understand the genre, and they're using it well. And what it does for the viewer is lets you relax. You have that familiarity, and then they can throw in strange things like the 1,000-year-old beef or whatever that turned into an alien parasite, and you're still okay with it because you understand what tropes are going to be here. The gunfights, the outlaw POV is a Western trope. Bounty hunters is a Western trope. Gathering a posse is a Western trope. Episodic adventures is both Western and sci-fi. Spaceships is going to be science fiction. However, they use spaceships kind of like horses.
Yeah.
In this show a lot. Everyone has their own spaceship. They get in them. They're riding around, chasing each other, shooting at each other from their spaceships. So almost everything in here is a nod to a Western, but with a veneer of science fiction, which I think works great. Blends those genres, makes it very interesting, makes us comforted watching it, and makes us not have to do a lot of work generally when it comes to the plots, because we will understand those conventions very well.
Awesome. So that worked out perfectly, like you said. I mentioned that was a little bit of opposite day for me. So based on my rating, I would recommend this to others. So if someone was asking me for kind of an anime to get into anime, this is, I think, a strong one for that, because it does feel familiar in so many ways, and there's so many references that we would get.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things that folks maybe who haven't watched a ton of anime would relate to and find this an easy one to watch. However, because of how much anime I've watched, I did struggle with this one a little bit. So if you're okay with it, I'd like to get in the diss track, because this is one that I would recommend.
Yeah, let's do it.
I see you have made your decision. Now let's see you enforce it.
But not one I would go back to. So I've got a little bit of a history with Cowboy Bebop, because this is the third time I've tried to get into this show. So 2 times before we decided to do this one because of what Netflix has coming out, I had tried to watch Cowboy Bebop, and I would get to episode like 3 or 4 and just drop it. And in fact, I fell asleep 3 times watching this show, and not because I was tired at all. I was fully awake, and there's something about this show that puts me to sleep. And I was trying to pinpoint what it is. There's a lot of long shots where there's no dialogue, there's no nothing. It's just like scenery, and something about that with me just zonks me out.
Do you watch a lot of Westerns outside of this? Do you watch a lot of any of the Man with No Name stuff, Fistful of Dollars for a Few Dollars More, Good, Bad, and the Ugly? Any John Wayne, like The Shootist, Sons of Liberty Vance, anything like that?
Not very many of the old ones. When I was younger, I liked Westerns a lot. Like I liked Tombstone and Young Guns and
so modern
Unforgiven.
Westerns.
And yeah. Those are the ones that
Unforgiven is
I've
still
watched.
great and does have some of the pacing, but one of the tropes of Westerns is exactly what you're talking about, is that pacing. Is that like long shots, single shots, compositions of 7 guys standing on screen. I like this, so I want to take a shot at this about why you fell asleep, because that's the emotion, right? It's like boredom.
Yeah.
So what is that? And I wonder, this would be something I would posit, because a show like this is going to naturally be up and down, because 2 things: it's episodic, and it's also a group of characters. It's an ensemble. It's not, we're not following just Spike.
Yeah.
And so there are going to be characters we like more or less. Some people probably like the Faye episodes more. Some people probably like the Spike episodes more. Nobody likes the Edward episodes more, I hope. I don't know. So you have these different characters that kind of take the spotlight.
Spike's episodes
Tend to be more crime oriented. Jets are more Western. Fays are more femme fatale. So you have these different things going on. And this happens a lot in reading. I feel like third person narratives where the character changes is you'll get to an episode and it'll be a Jet episode and you're like, Jet kind of bores me. And so you turn yourself off kind of right away. And that's a common. Episodic ensembles often have problems with that. I'm super excited about this one. This one is boring. This one I like. Now, I liked most of these all the way through. There's a couple I kind of didn't love, but
yeah. Edward was the most anime in this to me, like modern anime. But I could see why people would see Jar Jar Binks in Edward. I liked Edward, frankly, but that's why we're so different in this stuff. I don't remember if it was a specific character that put me to sleep. The only thing I could pinpoint is I was even watching some of the episodes today, and it would get into that long, like nothing's going on. They're just showing them getting on the ship for 20 minutes. And I would find myself like struggling. And then we would get to an awesome episode that I loved, like the Cowboy Andy one.
Mm-hmm.
And that one kept me going. So It was definitely specific episodes. I don't remember if it was specific characters. The other thing is the through line story, the main story, the vicious story was not ever present.
Mm-mm.
And I want to talk about this just real, and I don't want to burn through all my disses, but I'm assuming you don't have too many because you're at a 5.
I don't have too many, but I do have one about that.
Okay, if you want to go for it, and then I can latch on if it's similar to mine.
How are we going to do spoilers?
I would say...
Should we just say spoilers?
Yeah, that's fair.
For this diss, I need spoilers.
Yeah, that's fair. And really, you don't watch Cowboy Bebop for that main story.
No, not at all.
So I don't think it's a big deal if you spoil it.
This is my biggest diss, actually, of the whole thing is the ending. And it's because that through line didn't exist.
Yeah.
The literal character, Julia, who is the catalyst of the last two, the big double episode at the end, I have zero connection to.
Mm-hmm.
They should have made her Faye. And now here's the spoilers. As she dies, this Julia character dies, and it sends Spike into a downward spiral or a revenge tour. But I didn't care that she died.
Mm-hmm.
But if that was Faye, who has no ending in this, just kind of as there at the end, if that was Faye, suddenly I hate these people.
Yeah.
I hate Vicious. I hate the Syndicate. And I'm super excited for Spike to go lay waste to all of them. But when it's Julia, I don't feel the same way Spike supposedly feels for her. So it makes the ending very flat in an otherwise really fun ride.
Yeah.
The other little thing was Ed and Ein just kind of, see ya. And I'm like, okay, so they're going to have to go off after Ed and Ein. They're going to get into trouble. Nope. Just never. They're just gone. They literally just see ya. We don't know what to do with these characters. So you guys go away. Is this based on a manga? I don't even know.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
They came out the same year, actually, both 1998, the books and the anime.
Okay.
So I don't know if that was done in conjunction or if, one just came quickly after the other. And I will put the creator of Cowboy Bebop up because I want to pay them respect. But a few years later, they made another show that we will have to get to.
Okay.
No matter what, at some point. If you liked this, you will love this other one. And it's called Samurai Champloo. And even just saying Samurai Champloo is sweet. Like, it puts a smile on my face just to say Samurai Champloo.
Samurai Champloo.
Well, the style of this is is unbeatable. You can't knock the style.
Now you get every type of music in it, right? And that's one of my positives. But
mine too, actually.
The root is jazz, right? There's a lot of jazz in there.
Yeah.
In Samurai Champloo, the root is hip hop.
Samurai Champloo. 1, 2, 3.
It sounds good. We'll get to it.
And it's sweet. It's amazing. And there's a through line that is constantly there.
Okay.
And it's finding the samurai that smells like flowers. That's the plot. That's the through line.
Is that like the one-armed man from The Fugitive?
Yeah, kind of like that, but you don't know anything about what it means. All you know is that they're trying to find the samurai that smells like flowers. You don't know why. You don't know anything about it until the end. Then it pays off, and it pays off in a good way, in a fulfilling way. So yeah, definitely one we'll have to get to, and it's by the same creator. So I think that fits. So watching that and then coming back to this, although, like I said, I would recommend this. These few disses I have, I struggled with it. It put me to sleep. The through line, like you said, didn't mean a lot to me throughout it. I enjoyed the one-off episodes, the good ones, way more than any of the main story quest, so to speak. And then the last one, and you just kind of brought this up, there's a lot of the characters in there that I was supposed to get attached to, like Julia, that I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, I was just like, meh, whatever. So these things made it tough for me. However, it's still a good show to recommend to people because it's fun and it's funny. And
yeah, it is. I seriously considered 4, but I was like, I just enjoyed it way too much to do.
Yeah.
When we watch these, I'm like finding time to watch them. And with this one, I was like, well, I'm squeezing in another episode because and I got done like way earlier because I was just squeezing in and watched a couple of them twice and stuff. but the ending was so unsatisfying that it almost brought it down to that 4 for me. But I would definitely recommend it. It's anime enough, I assume, to pull people more towards anime, but it's Western genre and Western storytelling enough that it won't confuse people, it won't scare people. Edward might.
Yeah, and she stands out so much because of it. However, I think that was intentional to have the opposite for folks who love anime and love the feel of anime and just love that chipper, positive, hopeful, kiddish energy in there.
She's my next diss. Do you have more?
You can go for one. I've got one more.
I got 2 more disses as well. Edward is my diss, not because she was super annoying, even though she was. Not super annoying. That's unfair. It was just I was very indifferent. And I didn't know if I was supposed to be laughing at her antics or if I was supposed to be annoyed in some ways, because like Spike is obviously annoyed. He says he doesn't like women or children or dogs
right.
or whatever, pets. Yeah. And that's like the whole...
And they're all on the ship, every single one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. The reason I didn't like Edward as a character was because one of the episodes, it was called Wild Horses. And the plot was... there were some pirates and they were hacking into ships. And the only thing Edward does is hack. And yet she had nothing to do with this episode. She's a super hacker and doesn't stop the hacker. This is what you do. So instead, all she was relegated to becoming was the Deus Ex Machina machine. Oh, we don't know what to do. Oh, Edward can hack it. Oh, they're here. Or... oh, I'll stop their ship in mid-air. And all these, like, whenever they needed something magic for Edward to do, she just did it.
In the one episode where it was like her time to shine, it wasn't there.
Right. It's like, oh, they're hacking. What are they going to do? And it's like, instead, Spike flies around and the ship hacks themselves or whatever.
Yeah.
And on top of that, none of her humor landed for me.
Yeah, I did laugh at her sometimes, but... my last diss is it's got one of the worst audio mixes I've experienced in a long time. And what I mean by this is the voices are about this loud. And then the explosions are like this and the music's like this. The audio mix is terrible in this show where I'm like turning up the volume when they're talking. And then when the action starts, I'm turning down the volume when the action starts. It was really, really bad mix. So that's from a technical standpoint, my last diss.
Well, mine's also actually audio.
Okay.
And this may be one that a lot of people disagree with. If you do, tell us in the comments below. I did not like Spike's voice. Not that I don't think that guy, I should have looked up the name, but not that I don't think the voice was cool or that he was a good voice actor, but it didn't match the character for me. He was like this little slight character that should be a smooth talker, and instead his voice was always deep and very mumbly, and it just didn't fit that character for me. So it kind of pulled me out. Just that voice, it was so jarring coming from that character.
I didn't notice that one as much. I think that's fair, though. One voice acting piece that I think is interesting is there's the actress who is going to play Faye Valentine in the live action on Netflix. And she was embroiled in controversy for like 10 minutes because she wasn't wearing a Faye outfit.
Sure. Everybody always is, yeah.
Right? So her outfit is not a Faye outfit. But when that was going on online, you got to hear her speak, and she sounds just like Faye does. Like they could literally be the same, and they aren't, but they could literally be the same actress. So I think that'll be kind of cool for people who are fans of the anime to go into the live action and hear a voice that sounds just like Faye.
I don't know why you need a live action. I bet there's not a lot of people who go from the anime to the live action. I bet you it's more the other way.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think people would watch the live action and then go to the anime. I think you're correct about that.
Yeah.
Creativity bankruptcy is my best guess. I mean, it's the same reason why we're not coming out with anything new. We're going to go with what established intellectual property that we have some sort of confidence in, that even if it's terrible, it will still bring some viewers.
Right.
That's the only reason I can think of to do it, because none of the ports have been good. The Death Note port was serviceable at best. Any of the other ones, just there's not been a good one. I'll just put it that way. There's not been a good live action port. I hate to say it, and maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, sound off in the comments. Like Merv said,
Right.
blow me up. But
I've heard Battle Angel is good,
oh yeah, that one wasn't bad.
the Robert Rodriguez film, but I like Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah, I liked that one.
I can't say if any of these are good or bad because I haven't watched any anime and the live action version of it.
That was a good pickup. Alita Battle Angel is good. I liked that one. But I tried watching the Attack on Titan live action. No. Parasyte. No. Death Note. Eh.
Wait, is Parasyte the one that won an Academy Award?
No, it's a different Parasyte. That's awesome.
Oh,
Totally
okay.
different Parasyte. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, well, then I guess maybe I have watched the live action. I thought it was pretty good.
Parasyte, the anime, is about a guy who gets a parasite alien that takes over his hand because it was supposed to take over his entire body but failed in its mission. So then, because they're reliant on each other in a symbiotic type of way, they go on adventures, and he's got a monster hand. It's actually really good anime if anyone's looking for
like
another
Vampire Hunter D.
Yeah, but more about the interaction between the main character and the hand.
Yeah, that was like a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So I am ready to go on to my favorite things if you are.
I am. Yeah, that was all my disses.
Have you joined us yet? If not, then I'm sorry. I won't be sharing my dinner with you.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to get the easiest one out of the way. It's called Cowboy Bebop, and that's because the music is excellent. No matter what kind of music you like, you're going to hear it. Jazz, heavy metal, electronic, world music even, hip-hop, it's all there, and it's all good. The music's amazing. Your turn.
Yeah, music I have as my number one as well. And I'll add into that the titles all had a musical theme to them.
Yeah.
In some way or another, the title of the show and the title of each episode. And they were often clever.
Is that it?
Is it still me? I'll still go. Well, for music and titles, yeah. The ship designs were sweet.
Mm-hmm.
They were very different. They didn't look like ships I'd seen before. And I could tell who was in each ship. And the ship matched the personality of the driver. They worked in both the sci-fi elements of it and the dogfighting kind of Western elements to have those unique bits.
I didn't love Jet's arcade crane. It was fine. I didn't love it.
I like that thing.
I wasn't a huge fan of the crane.
Well, it's so clumsy and big, and he even had like the one arm, and it was.
So this came out in 1998, and the animation ranges quite a bit from pretty ugly to absolutely beautiful. However, for the most part, the animation is really solid. It stands with anything that comes out today. So I thought that was really good too. I will show, however, a couple examples of some of the not so great animation.
The CGI.
Well, and there's one where there's a cow on a railroad track, and the cow looks terrible on the railroad track. And that's one that I'll never get that cow out of my head because it's so bad.
Cow on a railroad track. Western trope.
Yeah. Ugly cow on a railroad track. Is that the Western? Probably. But overall, animation was solid.
I've never seen a Western cartoon. I don't think so.
Go for it.
I'm going to go with I have two more kind of big ones and then an ancillary one. But the big one is the world is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool that it's just the solar system. So they're often on Mars or Earth, but they don't look how we would recognize Mars. They have some terraformed bits, and Earth is mostly destroyed in kind of the poor part of town of the universe for the most part. They have a cool mix of like new and old. So the ships are always falling apart. This is a George Lucas thing, a Star Wars kind of deal. But I thought it was the thing I thought was the coolest was that the ships didn't have fake gravity automatically.
Mm-hmm.
Like Star Wars is like, Well, when we're in the ship, we have gravity. And when we're outside the ship, there's no gravity, but there's no, it's soft sci-fi. Again, it's mostly fantasy. The gates looked cool, like the way they got fast travel through those giant gates. The backstory of the gate explosion on the moon, like breaking the moon apart. So the Earth is constantly changing because it's getting just decimated by chunks of moon all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's both a cool lore bit, but also harkens back to like Chernobyl and these kind of real world events, kind of a big part in Faye's backstory. And so I thought all the world building was spot on.
In conjunction with that, just a lot of the detail. So a lot of the side characters were amazing. In one of the first episodes, there's like the pet shop owner woman, and she's like, "Oh, my babies. Oh, my babies.
Something's upsetting my babies. Oh."
And something I will never get out of my head is her go, "Oh, my babies."
Because they were trying to steal, that was the Ein episode, right?
Yeah.
Ein was a super expensive dog.
For some reason.
Right.
Wears costumes well, I guess. But the other ones were, and I've got an example here. There are a lot of really cool, just little callback things. So at the beginning of episode 3, Spike is on a elevator and they're like, "Hey, there's no smoking." And he's smoking a cigarette and he just eats it.
Yeah.
And then later there's a super computer chip, poker chip, and he just eats it. So like it's set up that Spike is someone who eats weird things and totally not something you had to do.
Well, he can eat it and bring it back.
Right. Bring it back up. No problem.
Yeah, that was the setup. He ate the cigarette and then brought it back later. Yeah.
Yeah. So just that little detail that we didn't even need, but it did make it, easier to accept. Another one is they were talking about in one of the episodes about how the hyperspace rings that they used to travel quickly throughout space were rushed out regardless of some potential safety hazards. And then like 10 episodes later, it's like a feng shui one, and it's about the daughter of a guy who was in an accident with those rings because they were rushed out.
Mm-hmm.
And spoiler alert, it turns out he didn't die from that yet. But it was a really cool callback to something that far ago. And wow, what a cool way to set up that episode to talk about those being rushed way back in the series. So a lot of really cool little details like that.
Yeah, that was a good episode too. I liked how the cemetery had rings. It was the same similar design. Even though it wasn't prevalent, I really liked the interplay between Spike and Vicious and how they were in war together. They were part of the syndicate together and they had been friends, but they are really strong foils of each other in terms of Spike wanting to be done and gone, Vicious wanting to be the leader and the boss. Spike uses a gun, Vicious uses a sword, so there's some cool fighting, but both of them are kind of orbiting Julia. And this is never explicit, which I actually also liked, is it was never explicit what broke Spike and Vicious up, but we guess it's Julia in a sort of love triangle.
Yeah, and I like it at the end when they've got the sword, Vicious has the sword and Spike has the gun, and then they get dropped opposite of each other and they like kick them back to each other to make sure that they've got the right weapons for this duel.
Right at the end, yeah. I know, I thought for sure, I'm like, oh cool, they're gonna pick up each other's weapons. Nope.
A lot of the jokes do land. It can be pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
There was one that kind of stood out to me. I don't know why, but it's the Cowboy Funk episode, which is definitely one of my favorites, with Cowboy Andy or whatever, and the bomber guy who can never seem to tell anyone why he's blowing up buildings, which I thought was pretty good. Edward's looking up Cowboy Andy and she's like, "He's a member of the YMCA." And Spike goes, "He's a Christian?" And she's like, "No, not that one. The Young Men's Cowboy Association."
No, not that why. The Young Men's Cowboy Association.
I don't know why. It was just such a dad joke that just cracked me up.
Yeah, that was a fun episode. I've had this conversation with a lot of my friends, my writing friends, and it almost always boils down to television, of course, obviously, but I like episodic things. I like anthologies, episodic television shows, more than I like continuations. generally speaking. And now this is also one of those things that could lead to boredom for a lot of people, is like, oh, another one, find this bounty, go get them, and then bring them back, and you don't get paid.
And it fails. It doesn't even work. Yeah.
Right. Over and over. Though there are clever ways that it fails, I think a lot of times. And when you're watching a normal bounty hunter show or a Western, you're like, oh, what clever way are they going to get the bounty this time? And in this one, you're going, what clever way are they going to not get the money this time? But I like episodic things. I love Twilight Zone. The early episodes of a TV show Supernatural, I really like when it's Monster of the Week kind of stuff. I would have rather this went, ignore the through line. Let's just have a bunch of one-offs and then a big movie two-parter at the end. The crew, Faye and Edward and Ein and Jet, Spike in turmoil, as opposed to let's have this through line that's only ghosting through and then comes in at the end for the big payoff, which doesn't feel like a big payoff. Then have it the other way around. Then have it be, what is Vicious doing this episode? Let's go get him. Next, we've almost caught him, but he got away this time. And the Syndicate, he's gaining control. Like, a lot of people would prefer, I mean, I guess there's two schools. A lot of people prefer the kind of big story arc, whereas I like the episodic, so many fun one-offs. The risk there is that you're going to have ups and downs, but that's with everything.
Yeah, if it's a big, long story, you're going to have lulls in the middle. They probably could have done that, just taken, I think there was a total of 4 Vicious-centered episodes where it was just all about Vicious, just make that the cap at the end. And then you wouldn't have had to find creative ways for the name Julia to keep coming up throughout the series. Another positive I have is this came out in 1998 and is one of the most diverse shows I've watched. I mean, every type of individual is in this show in some way, shape, or form, and it's never played up for that reason, but I thought that was really cool. Like, it's just there, and anyone could find themselves in this show at some point, which is awesome. Did you have anything else you wanted to cover from the favorites? I've got one more and then a little bit of a tangent.
I think we've covered them all.
So I didn't have a problem with them not getting the bounty. I thought it was just kind of an interesting tidbit. In fact, I did like a lot that they were constantly struggling and that finding food was a problem and that
they were always hungry.
Yeah, and that never let go. I don't know how they could afford to power the ships.
It's a Western. It's not a sci-fi. It's not hard sci-fi. It's,
it's a little bit of
it's soft sci. It's a space opera plus a Western.
Yeah, of course I'm trying to sound smart here, right?
Right.
I didn't really have a problem with that, but I love that they struggled with food and just getting money and all that through the whole series.
Faye Valentine eating Ein's dog food in front of Ein while he looked on with big puppy eyes is like a perfect character moment. That is Faye Valentine's character. She will eat the dog food in front of the dog.
Here in the West, when these struggles are in entertainment, they only last about 10 minutes before the protagonist becomes rich and famous somehow. And maybe that's why a lot of people outside of the US think we're all super rich and wealthy. The struggle is always quite short, and then somehow they get whatever resources they need. Or another one that really bothers me in relation to this is when they're like, they work for a nonprofit, or they're a starving artist, but they have like $1 million studio apartment in New York City, right?
Right. Or they're a group of friends with no apparent jobs that live in penthouses in New York that would be $20,000 a month.
Exactly that. A perfect example. And I'm just glad that wasn't in this.
When I was in Asia, I was at a school in Shanghai, and that was one of the things they brought up. Oh, you Americans are all wealthy. And I'm like, well, in fairness, yes, a lot of Americans live better than a lot of the rest of the world. But they brought up the show Friends.
Right.
Everyone lives in a big apartment and you don't have to have jobs and you just hang out and drink all day. And it's like, well, that's not exactly accurate.
Yeah, I like the gritty, more realistic shows like Shameless or even Trailer Park Boys that show, the struggle is real. Everyone here doesn't live in New York or LA and, multi-million-dollar places. So I really like that about the show. And it also made kind of my disdain for when that's done here in the West stand out even more. So Alec Baldwin recently accidentally, during filming of a Western, which I think is pretty relatable here.
With Jensen Ackles in it from Supernatural, to tie that to what I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Good point. I remember reading that too. But unfortunately, Helena Hutchins was killed during this, and of course that's a terrible tragedy, and may she rest in peace. And I, honest to goodness, mean that.
Oh, for sure. You can find plenty of bad takes on the internet about the whole situation on any side that you want.
Yeah, for sure. And at the end of the day, no matter what, it's a tragedy, and it shouldn't have happened. And basically, a live round was put into a prop gun. Now, I promise you, I will bring this back to Cowboy Bebop. So, unfortunately, we had this recent tragedy that came up, and this also brought up a lot of discussions around the last time this happened. And the last time this happened during the filming of a movie was, if I'm honest with myself, my favorite movie. Like, if there's a movie that I've watched more than any other movie in my life, it's The Crow with Brandon Lee. And unfortunately, during the end of filming of that film, the same thing happened to Brandon Lee, and we lost Brandon Lee, which was terrible.
It's similar, but it wasn't a live round for Brandon Lee. It was a dummy bullet that got lodged and then shot. But same thing.
Yeah, so the way it works is they use bullets that look like real bullets, but the lead part is empty, it's hollow. But when they're showing up close the loading of a gun in a movie, they need the bullet to have a tip. And what happened with Brandon Lee is a piece of that fake tip broke off inside of the prop gun, and then when the blank was fired behind it, that piece is what killed Brandon Lee. And I'm wondering, after enough time has passed and Twitter has calmed down and all that, if they're going to find that there was some version of this negligence that happened.
They said they've already confirmed it was a live round, but who knows?
Yeah. Both tragic. So after a month-long investigation, it was found to be negligence rather than foul play. The film was finished up using, at the time, very groundbreaking CGI and face replacement technology. And in the mid-90s, this was all very, very new technology. One thing that's interesting about this as well is the stunt person who was a brand new stunt person at the time, who was Brandon Lee's stunt person in that film, in The Crow. His name is Chad Stahelski. And Chad Stahelski is one of the creators of the John Wick series. So nice little side note there. What was tragic about Brandon Lee is it was right when he was going to explode.
Yes.
Like when that movie came out, how well he did with that movie, he was going to become Brad Pitt level movie star, like Tom Cruise level movie star. That was his moment. It was just so sad that we lost him, especially if you looked at how he acted in that movie and how he portrayed that character. And then through the subsequent sequels, how it just got worse and worse and worse, ending with Edward Furlong, who was just terrible. I mean, it just showed that it was a difficult role to pull off.
I don't know that I've ever seen any of them but the first one.
The second one's serviceable, the third one's bad, the fourth one's awful. Like, I loved The Crow so much.
That's based on a comic book as well. Speaking of
James O'Barr from Detroit. Yeah. Why am I bringing this up? Why do I talk about Alec Baldwin and what recently happened? Why am I talking about The Crow? Well, one of the episodes in Cowboy Bebop is The Crow. It's heavily influenced and based off The Crow, which I think is so cool because this was just 3 years after that had happened, after that movie had finished being made. And it's episode 5. And I think it's the first episode where we are introduced to Vicious in the series.
Yeah.
but a lot of the shots are set up the same. The hero, Spike, gets shot. The bad guy has long hair and a sword and a gravelly voice. There's even a bird. He has a bird with him that looks just like a crow. Yep. Spike was told by people he kept meeting up with that he had come back from the dead, right? They all thought he was dead and he had come back from the dead. Brandon Lee comes back from the dead in the crow. Even at the end, the good guy goes up some stairs at a church to face the bad guy. There's even an ornate round window in both. And even in both, the good guy sees flashbacks, rosy imagery of their past. They're both revenge plots. And then probably one of the standouts is Spike gets thrown through the round window, just like Brandon Lee gets thrown through the round window in The Crow. So it's, I mean, at first I thought it was just me because I love that movie so much. Am I like, is this just like The Crow because I want it to be just, but no, there's way too much there. So I went to the internet.
Yeah, it's too much similarity.
Just to make sure I wasn't crazy. And there's a ton of people online that are like, yep, that's The Crow. That was inspired by The Crow. So I wanted to go on that tangent, one, to, you know, just briefly pay respect to the people who unfortunately lost their lives, you know, for their art. And then two, just to point out that just solid connection between the show and the film, my favorite film.
That's a good, I like that tangent. It's one of the nice things you can do with, and probably one of the reasons why I tend to like episodic things is because you can do homages, tributes. You can do weird, really weird episodes. There's some really weird episodes. There's a couple of them that are like off the rocker. But if you have too many kind of in a row of the same, like if it's just a continuation, if it's just one big long story, you can't really get away with, oh, here's one really weird episode. Here's a funny episode. Here's a different genre that we're going to play with. Here's one with completely different music. And I think that's probably one of the reasons you get the diversity stuff too, is because you can throw in a character for an episode and then they're gone. Like there's a couple episodes that kind of put you to sleep, as you mentioned, or, you know, obviously you're going to have more up and down with episodes. But if it's a long continuation and I don't like the characters, I don't just have to wait 20 minutes for the next one. It's, I don't like the characters and I'm turning the whole thing off. So there's definitely risk reward in that regard.
Man, Merv, I cannot wait till we get to Samurai Champloo.
Samurai Champloo.
And
I can't
I'm
either
pumped
now
to hear what you think of that. Oh my goodness.
We're going to have to wait though, because we're just doing this one.
Yeah. And we've got a couple more already on the list, but when we get to it, if I'm wrong, I'll eat something weird. I don't know. I'll figure out something.
Okay.
But I was trying at that episode 5 to pinpoint more direct homages like The Crow in episode, and I wasn't smart enough to pick up on any of the others.
I picked up on one.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that it's direct, but it's the one you've already mentioned with the poison
bacteria monster.
Yeah. It was very much like the Tribbles episode of Star Trek.
Okay.
Where it's in everything and they're trying to get rid of it.
There was a lot of that narration too. And that might have even been the one where at the beginning he's like, and it's the only one he does this. And he's like space journal or space log or, you know, just like Captain Kirk would do.
Right.
So I think you're right. I think that is a direct Star Trek connected episode, just because it's the only one where Jet is like space journal or space diary, you know,
right,
star date, blah, blah, blah. It's the only one he does that.
Captain's log 731.
Yeah. So I think you picked up on another one. So if anyone else knows any other ones,
there's probably people who have made videos about all the connections.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's a lot.
But that's what I've got for Cowboy Bebop. Do you have anything else you would like to say about it?
I do not.
All right. Well, thank you for watching and or listening. You can find our Discord in the description. You will also find a link tree so that I don't have to say all the other places where we're at. This is a genius idea or thing that Merv came across.
Pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. So just go to the link tree. You can see all the places that we're at. Thank you so much again, and we'll talk to you next one. Bye, everybody.
See you later, Space Cowboy.
Nice.
It's over for you. You're done. But you'll be back.